Hey guys, welcome back to Roots Refuge Farm. My name is Jess, and today is the third episode in this season of garden tours. Now, if you're new here, I'm gardening in the Midlands of South Carolina in Zone 8. My last frost date was in April, and our first frost date should come the end of October or into early November, so we have a pretty long season here, and we grow a lot of our food. Now, our garden is beautiful, if you ask me, but it is a work in progress. We just started this. We moved to this farm last year and began developing land that didn't have anything on it. Now, I do these videos throughout the growing season. I've done this for years at our old farm and now at this one. Today is July 4th, so I hope that while I'm shooting this video, many of you are getting ready to have a really fun day with your family. You probably hear my kids running around. They're very excited. And we're actually getting ready to go out of town. And we will be out of town this week, but you won't see this until the weekend whenever we're back. But I wanted to make a video of the garden right before we left so that I would have it as a reference point so I can do another garden tour when I get back and we can really see the growth. Because the beginning of July, especially a week like this where we are forecasted to get pretty regular rain, there's going to be a lot of growth. It's going to be really exciting to see. Now, my plan is for this whole side of my driveway to be growing gardens. We're not there yet. As you can see, we've only made it down to about this point. Eventually, this is going to stretch down all the way to this end. Down here is going to be primarily perennial things, some cut flowers, and this section is going to be where the raised bed potager garden starts. This is actually underway. You can see here, these are the panels for those raised beds. And to prepare this space, we actually did like a really shallow till and leveled it out some with our tractor because it was kind of uneven. We're gonna have to bring in just a little bit of fill dirt, which we have a pile of that we kept when we put our driveway in. It's all the way over there. There are weeds and stuff in here, but we're planning on putting weed fabric down in the rows, and then we'll put some sort of barrier at the bottom of the raised bed, probably cardboard. And I've been working on the layout for this for the last few weeks. I finally just had to nail something down, but I'm really excited about it. So one question that I do get asked whenever I talk about building raised beds, people are like, why would you do that? Obviously your in-ground gardens are working just fine, and they are, but it's really more for, one, showing people the options. A lot of people find raised beds an easier introduction into gardening, especially if they're living in town, if they have any sort of physical ailments or issues that might keep them from gardening in the ground. It does cut down on weeds, and for me, I love art, I love beauty, and I garden as really a form of worship. I mean, it's something that I absolutely love to steward the garden. And you know, I love to make a beautiful space. So this raised bed, I call this my art project garden. It's going to be here and on the other side of the greenhouse with this cottage garden in the middle. It's probably going to take us a couple seasons to finish building it, but this side should be largely in soon. So our ducks keep getting out of the fence in the pond, and so far they've not damaged anything, so I haven't actually done anything to stop them. They're in here now picking through where we dug potatoes, so there's probably a lot of insects in there, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. So been keeping an eye on it, making sure that no fruit is showing issues, that they're not picking at any little seedlings, and so far it's been okay. They hear me talking. Sometimes we'll herd them back to the pond, so I guess they're preemptively going ahead and going. Here is one of the asparagus beds. It's looking really good. It's interesting to me how spears are still coming up. So there's one, you can see what it looks like. I haven't harvested any out of here because I really am trying to let it get good and established. I've got this bed and I've got another one right across there. And I feel pretty good with them. It's purple passion asparagus. And these were a little bit more mature crowns, so I can probably start harvesting a little bit next year. And then the year after I'll be able to really harvest it. Here is the cottage garden in front of the greenhouse. I think maybe this is different than the last time you saw it. I can't remember. that we've gone ahead and finished the expansion of the width. So for a little while we just had part of it done because we had a bunch of plants over here. So it looks really good. I am dealing with weeds coming up between my flagstone. I guess that should have been expected. I'd hoped the thyme would have an opportunity to take over before the weeds really started battling in, but no such luck. I'll tell you, I'm very pleased with this. I didn't expect it to fill out as much as it has, and it makes me feel extremely anticipatory for future years. I just imagine in the future when this is completely full, when you really can't see much of the ground. And I got a little taste of that over here because this really has filled out nicely. These are actually two really big Limelight Hydrangeas that my friend Roxana sent me. I'm trying to decide where to put them. I thought about putting them up in front of my house. They will get really large and they're so beautiful. They get really massive blooms that they kind of go, they're greenish and white in different phases, and then they dry. And I've seen Roxana take them and make like wreaths and arrangements out of the dried blooms. My friend Matthew does that as well. Her channel is Soil and Margaritas. His is the Southerner's Northern Garden, and they both are like the hydrangea king and queen. And I do have some hydrangeas. I have some that a viewer brought me some cuttings for. They're potted up in the greenhouse, getting more established, and those probably will go in front of my house. And I think I'm going to put the limelights out here in the garden because limelights can have more sun than other hydrangea varieties. They just need like a good deal of irrigation. And so I'm considering putting them kind of maybe one up here where it'll get really large, or I'm considering putting them in the back of the greenhouse. I need to decide today. When something is special, I always want to get it right. That's why that gardenia plant is still in a pot, because I just haven't been able to commit, but it's starting to look rough. I'm like, oh, you're so special that I'm going to neglect you. And I don't mean to do that. It just kind of happens because I'll get a little bit of analysis paralysis, and I'm going to have to just decide where these hydrangeas are going to go and put them in. I mean, you can move things. It's not like you're putting something in concrete to make a decision, but I also want them to thrive and be healthy, and obviously moving them is not necessarily the best thing for them. It rained a lot last night. It actually stormed pretty heavily and knocked our power out for a while. The garden is especially lush this morning. I'll walk around here and just take a quick look. Nothing's changed here since the last tour. Now, I have all of these fruit trees in pots, as well as some different vines and stuff. This was our order from Stark Bros that came in at the beginning of the season, and we just potted them up since we weren't ready to put anything in yet. And I am considering putting a dwarf fruit tree on the back corner here on both sides. I was trying to decide if I wanted to switch that and put a hydrangea. The raised bed garden is going to come, this is 50 feet wide. And so the raised bed garden is going to come over to like about right here, and we'll have another walkway where you can enter in, and it'll have like kind of a seating area in the middle. And whatever I build here will be mirrored on the other side. This potager garden will be about 100 feet wide of space, but of course it's interrupted in the middle by the greenhouse. And I'm thinking doing a couple of dwarf fruit trees on the back side and then maybe up on the front side, because I would like to have some shade out here. It's very hot where we live. Having full sun is actually a detriment because the plants just bake. I mean, 14 hours in the sunlight whenever it's 100 Fahrenheit, 38 Celsius daily for weeks on end. Even when we are getting rain, that's really hard on plants. And so I was thinking that if I did some dwarf fruit trees, that would also add a really neat element into the garden of something else that we could harvest and eat. It would give just some dimension and height for the design aspect, but it would also add a little bit of shade. And whenever you're in the middle of a field in sunny South Carolina, it's not going to be fully shaded by something like that. Even if it's shaded for part of the day, I'll still get the 6 hours required to be called full sun. So here's the potato patch. 3 rows are replanted. I was debating in my last garden tour whether we were going to replant more potatoes, but I'd bought a big old box of potatoes that all started sprouting. And I knew that it was going to take us some time to build that side of the garden, and that likely once this was built, we weren't going to have time to plant it with anything that needed the warm weather to survive. So likely anything that goes in this garden is going to be frost hardy things. So since potatoes come to fruition in like a few months, less than a few months, I decided I had this big box of potatoes that had sprouted and they were growing eyes all over and little sprouts. And I thought, well, we'll just go ahead and put these in the ground. Worst case scenario is we don't get that side planted for fall. And that we build those beds over winter and then plant it for spring, but we have a lot of space, so that would be fine. And potatoes are just such a great way to round out the pantry. I've been giving a lot of them away, canning, putting several up, and so having another round of those, it's not going to go amiss. I'm very eager for the changes that are going to happen here just in the course of doing the garden tours this season. It's just a really pretty space. And when I look back on the videos from earlier this spring, just already seeing how much this has changed and developed, it makes me feel really good. So here lies the star of today's tour. I'm pretty sure that this is gonna take the cake. My Sunflowers Steve sunflowers, his Van Gogh Fantasy Mix, are beginning to open. Look at this. How amazing are these blooms? I messaged Steve earlier this week. If you haven't been following along, these are flowers my friend bred and developed over the course of many years. Just released them this year, so I'm getting the great honor of growing them in my garden. And I've been anticipating these since I heard last year, before I even met Steve, I heard him on another channel talking about these sunflowers, and I thought, I really want to grow those. And then he and I have become friends. He's been here to visit me before in South Carolina, and since hearing about these, I have been greatly anticipating them. And I messaged him this week and I was like, wouldn't you know, I'm getting ready to go out of town this week and it looks like I'm gonna miss the sunflowers peaking. And so I have been like willing these things to open so I can see them before I leave. And I don't think that they're actually gonna peak. I'm seeing a lot of buds coming up that I think they'll be opening when I get back. And these will all be like in their glory when I get back. This is the conflict of gardeners in the summer. We're taking our kids on a family vacation. That's important. It's actually the first real family vacation we've ever gone on because we always just use like visiting family as trips. And my mom's coming and our kids, we're going on vacay. It's gonna be really good. But tearing me away from my garden, I'm literally just like, I'm making an investment in my children's childhood. But I really don't want to miss my sunflowers. Very thankful that they're starting to open. Here's another beautiful one. Look at that. Extraordinary. I've been taking photos of every single one that opens just because I'm so smitten. And I just think it's fascinating that they're all so different. Of course, that's kind of the way it is whenever you're developing something new. Even when it's pretty established, you're still going to get such a mix. And I have not been disappointed in these. So we've got the field of sweet potatoes. And then right past that, melons, which you can see. These are sugar baby watermelons. And this is an heirloom that Will brought me, and I had the name wrong. And now I cannot remember what it is. I'll ask him, and I hear those pollinators just buzzing. And down here we've got lots of winter squash growing, and I feel pretty good about how the plants look. I've had a few people tell me that I'm in like this sweet spot honeymoon phase where the pests haven't found the garden yet, so I probably will have a really good squash year. There's so much food in this field, guys. And look at that. This is my first okra, and it's a little too big. Oh, I see several out here. I need to get some scissors. Okra. I missed you. Guys, I just love food from the garden. I eat okra raw. It's very good for your gut. If you have never eaten okra, I know that it's not very common in more northern places, but it is a big part of southern food. Pretty much a staple, but I do like to eat it raw. Some people are really turned off by okra because of its slimy texture inside. Of course, that you get the full force of that when you eat it raw. But that mucilage that's inside okra It was very, very good for your digestive tract. Okra is actually in the same family of marshmallow, hibiscus. They're all related. You can really see that in the blooms. When you look at an okra flower, it is very reminiscent of like a hibiscus flower or a marshmallow flower. In herbal medicine, marshmallow and hibiscus are both heavily used for digestive health, and okra is actually very good for digestive health as well. This was a little big to be eating raw. It's just a little bit harder, but when they're small and really tender, it's very good. I'm about to have a lot of it. Once you start plucking a few of them, just within no time, you need to be harvesting okra twice a day. It grows so fast that it goes from the perfect size to unusable in 24 hours. I'm still waiting to harvest a nice big tomato. I've got a few growing. I have started to pull hornworms. And tonight, while everybody's celebrating the 4th, I'm likely going to be out here with a blacklight flashlight because I'm missing hornworms. They're causing damage, I can see it. But I just don't see them outside during the day. They just blend in so much that I can find one if it's really big, but I miss the small ones. But I'll come out tonight. If you have a blacklight flashlight, hornworms glow under blacklight. And so if you come out in the dark and shine a blacklight on your plants, you can find them really, really small before they're able to do a lot of damage. So I'm planning on plucking hornworms tonight before I go out of town. We do have, obviously, Will's going to be here this week. Our employees are going to be here and keeping the farm and gardens, which is one of the reasons why this is our first family vacation, because it's the first time that we've really been able to leave our farm confidently, knowing that people were going to be staying here and keeping an eye on things like for a long time during the week. He won't be here at night, and so it would be easier for me to find the hornworms with the black light at night rather than him have to spend, you know, a significant amount of time looking for them during the day. Last garden tour, I was amazed at a very fasciated blossom, and sad day, it didn't make it through the heat. So this is what blossom drop looks like, and this is purely because it's so hot that these blossoms are just shriveling up and falling off. And it's happening not just to the really big ones like this one, but to a lot of them. Tomatoes really struggle to set fruit when it's over 90 degrees Fahrenheit, 32 Celsius. Now, thankfully, these tomatoes have a good bit of fruit on them. Dang, look. That one's blushing. Who is that? I do not have a tag on this. If I had to guess, it's either Dr. Ritchie's or Kellogg's Breakfast by the yellow. But once it's ripe, I'll know who this is. This blushing tomato is just barely turning yellow. I will probably pick that and take it with me. So when you become a gardener, you can enter into the age-old debate of does it make a difference for tomatoes to be vine ripened or ripen inside? Vine ripened is something that people really tout. Adds a lot of flavor to tomatoes. Okay, so my theory, my opinion, take it for what it's worth. From what I understand, and I've read a lot about this, basically what causes tomatoes to ripen is that they start producing a gas called ethylene. And as soon as they start blushing, that ethylene gas is in production. And so if you pick that tomato at that point and put it on a windowsill or put it in the house, it will continue to produce ethylene as long as you don't put it in the refrigerator. When you put it in the refrigerator, it does cut off the ethylene production, and therefore it might change color, but it's not actually ripening in the sense that it's developing more flavor. And basically, with that production comes the chemicals that give us the taste of a tomato. So when you buy a tomato at the store, oftentimes those were picked completely green, not blushing. If you pick a tomato completely green before it's triggered to start producing ethylene, it will turn color. It will ripen in a sense that it turns red or yellow or whatever it's going to be. But because it never starts producing that gas, it doesn't have the same flavor as had it been able to blush on the vine. The reason why I think people say vine ripened tomatoes taste better is because when they're out in the heat, it's concentrating the sugars. So if you're allowing it to get really ripe on the vine and then you're cutting it, all those sugars are concentrated. It's been out in the sun, which has been adding to that flavor, especially if you're not watering the heck out of it. Like, so if you're watering a whole lot, you're going to dilute the flavor. But if you pick it like in the middle of the afternoon on a hot day when it's been out on the vine and it's nice and fully ripe, that I do think is going to be your best tasting tomato. But if you, that's why people say put them on a windowsill to ripen them. If you take them and cut them off once they're blushing, so the production of the gas has begun. You can take it in the house and it will ripen and it will taste really good. I will harvest tomatoes like now. I'm getting ready to go out of town. That blushing tomato will come to the perfect amount of ripeness at our Airbnb, and I'll be able to have a sandwich. It'll actually be my first big tomato sandwich from my garden. I've had, my friend Jessie has shared some tomatoes with me. If I didn't do that, I would miss out on it. So it's kind of like one of those things. Would it be the most tasty to leave it on the vine and let it ripen in the sun and let those sugars get concentrated and not water it? Yeah, that would be best, but you know, I won't be here. If you're having pest issues, if you're having like squirrels steal your tomatoes or something like that, pick them when they're like this and let them ripen in the house, because if you're losing them, that's going to be better than losing them. If you have a big rain coming and you have blushing tomatoes like this, and there's going to be a really big rain coming, it's been dry, it's been hot, I would go ahead and pick them blushing and let them ripen in the house. Now you can also, like, I have a front porch that gets sun, just set them out on the banister of the front porch, let them sit in the sun. That's actually good to get that flavor, as long as they're not going to get nabbed by a pest. But if you're going to risk them splitting and the flavor getting really diluted from water, it would be better to me to pick them blushing. My squash plants are still producing. I had to pull one out because it got kind of sick looking, but for the most part they're looking pretty good. I'm going to harvest more squash today. We've got a ton of it, but I'm taking a squash casserole next door to our neighbors for our 4th celebration. Check this out. These are Kellogg's breakfast. These actually have a tag. Oh, they look so good. Wow, look at this. This is Big Rainbow. I'm so excited. My plants look really rough from the heat, but I've got big tomatoes on them, so I'm happy. Right here next to the tomato row, got a lot of holy basil, same on the other side. Of course, we've been making that amazing tea with this. If you haven't seen the video that I shot of Taylor teaching how to make holy basil tea earlier this week, definitely check that out. Making tea out of all kinds of basils. Even Jeremiah is liking the basil teas, which really surprised me because he doesn't even drink like regular sweet tea. So for him to really like that, it's nice. It's just really nice to be able to make such a refreshing and also healthful, it has medicinal benefits, beverage out of the garden. Oh, yes! Look, there's another one. Not quite ripe, but definitely got a good blush on it. That's a Cherokee Purple. I get to take a couple tomatoes with me. Oh, this is the one I saw out here last night that I was like, whoa. Y'all see my hornworm damage? You know, it never fails. I'll put videos up showing things and people will point out the hornworms that they see on a momentary glance on the screen. I can hardly see them during the day. Like, I completely miss them. And when I do find them, I'm always like, oh, whoa, there you are. I don't know, can you guys spot a hornworm here? There's definitely one on here. Unless the ducks got it. There's damage there. He ate one of the tomatoes a little. Saboteur. But look at this. That's probably the biggest tomato growing in the garden right now. That's a big rainbow. Here's a PSA on behalf of the bees. They say plant borage, we like it. Borage is a flower that is a really great companion plant to really anything in the garden. They say plant it by tomatoes. I'm not 100% sure why. Can I just give y'all permission real quick to completely ignore those companion planting charts that you see on Pinterest? I know people mean well, but so many people put together these do and do not things as if it's a very black and white issue, and it's not. It's not a black and white issue. There are so many people that are like, I was told you can't plant that next to that. A lot of times those companion planting charts are saying these are not good neighbors because they have different like soil desires. Sometimes they're saying it because they grow in different temperatures. I don't know why borage is said to be a good companion plant to tomatoes. I've been told it'll keep the hornworms off your tomatoes, as evidenced here. That's not exactly true. Borage is a good plant to have in your garden because the bees love it. It brings in lots of pollinators. It is edible if you so choose to eat it. It's very fuzzy, so it's kind of weird. But I've seen where people have done really cool things by like freezing these flowers into ice cubes for like parties and stuff. So funny because like I remember doing garden tours like through 2020 and I'm telling people this stuff, but nobody's having parties. I guess now I'm kind of thinking, oh, I guess I could do that, but they taste like cucumbers. It's nice, you know. I don't really want to eat a bowl of these flowers, but it tastes just like a cucumber. It's just also got a really fuzzy texture, so a little weird. I like the ice cube idea, but more than anything, I plant the borage for the bees because I want to be a considerate friend. and welcome them into the garden to make themselves at home. Still waiting on some ripeness to come on from my Black Beauty tomatoes. They are really awesome looking, but I haven't had any ripen yet. They're kind of splitting, but we have had a lot of rain. Last week I pondered during my tour whether celosia was edible, and I learned that it is. You guys told me. So here's the big bloom, which is really neat looking, super dense. It's also called coxcomb, and you can see why it definitely has that rooster comb look. But this is actually relative to amaranth, I learned, and the leaves are edible like a spinach. So let's give it a try. Yeah, it's got a little bit of a strong flavor. Definitely not a mild leafy green. You know, a lot of leafy greens you eat and it just tastes like water. It's not that. It definitely has a pretty strong flavor. I feel like this might be, I might enjoy this more cooked when I could put like some salt and some seasoning on it with that flavor. I don't think I would eat a ton of this raw because I actually like the kind of refreshing light flavor. I don't mind some lettuces that have more flavor because they do have so much water content. Probably would rather cook it, but you know, I made some soup the other day that I normally put like kale or spinach in. Of course, I don't have either one of those things growing because it's hot outside. But knowing that I could have grabbed this and thrown it in the soup, it probably would have been really great in there. So, cool. I'm glad to keep that in mind. So, as of right now, I have harvested many Armenian long green and white striped cucumbers, but I've yet to harvest any of the white ones. They're just now getting to be like really starting to produce. So I could harvest this. This one's really small. I'll leave it on here because it's still good and the skin is still really tender when it's larger. And so when I have the opportunity to harvest something very small like this, if there's no real gain in harvesting it, like it's not way better, make way more flavorful, way more tender, I'll let it get bigger because I'm just going to get more volume from it. So I could let this grow twice this size, 3 times this size even, and harvest it and still have a very usable cucumber-like fruit. I will say the difference between the white and the green, these are a lot furrier, like they have like a really kind of hairy texture, whereas the white is completely smooth. Once the white ones get bigger, I'm gonna have to do like a side-by-side taste comparison, because just based off that texture, I will probably err towards growing the white ones. But the green ones produced sooner and they've produced way more. So there is that consideration. That's a good thing. But man, the smooth skin of Armenian white long melon / cucumbers, it's really nice. It's super smooth. It's real, there's no furriness on it. And these are, I mean, you can kind of like rub that off, but it's just another thing you have to deal with. Oh, look at this. My Eureka lemon tree. It's got multiple lemons on it. There's a few that are good size and then several that are really small. Oh, I'm so excited to grow citrus. In fact, all of my citrus plants are doing very well in here. Most notable is my kumquat, probably because I'm just most excited about that. Kumquats are one of my favorite fruits to eat fresh. So I have a friend that lives down in Mobile, Alabama that has a kumquat tree right outside her door. And getting to try those fresh kumquats like blew my mind how different they were from the kumquats we had from the store. So when I bought this tree, it had several ripe fruits on it. And I enjoyed them so thoroughly that I've been very excited about the day that this is producing a lot. I got excited about citrus and skipped part of the garden, so we'll go back. Oh, I will say, I misspoke in my last garden tour. I said that rhubarb was cold tender, frost tender. It's definitely not frost tender. It's frost hardy. And what I was saying was I was saying we might move it out of the greenhouse, not because I was concerned about the cold. I am concerned it's not going to be cold enough in here for it in the winter. I tried to put a little caption on it when I was editing, and I guess I didn't save it properly, so I was not able to correct myself in that video. But this rhubarb, we're just letting it get established. My thought is I might end up moving it out once we establish in between the two high tunnels. We're just going to lay down you know, a bunch of cardboard and wood chips and stuff to suppress the grass there, and then maybe eventually be able to plant in it. And I think that'd be a good place for the rhubarb because it would be pretty shaded during the summer. We put it here because this was the coolest place we had to offer it during the summer, and my concern was it really struggling with the heat and then not getting cold enough in the winter, because we will be closing this greenhouse up in the winter for the sake of the citrus. Will's chestnut trees that he started from seed sure are looking good. We're gonna have to plant some of those here soon. I've got several other things that I need to plant. I just haven't been sure on the space. And then of course we have all our berry bushes out here that are gonna go down on the end of the garden belt past the gate to the barn. And then all our fruit trees, which are gonna go out by the pond where the ducks are, but we're waiting until it cools off some to put those in. Backtrack into my lovely garden. There's the tromboncino squash. Just because I'm so overwhelmed with summer squash right now, I've just been letting these continue to grow because they will harden like a winter squash and be able to be stored and roasted. And I need that more than more summer squash because I have lots of summer squash. And here, the Kajari melons are just bonkers. There are quite a lot of melons on here, but they're all still, they're pretty low to the ground. They're kind of hanging low in all this foliage. If you're growing on a vertical trellis like this, like these cattle panel arches, you do need to support things like melons. The ones low to the ground are not a big deal because if they disconnect, they'll just fall on the ground. You do need to keep an eye on it because like ants and stuff can get to them. But when they get a little higher in these blooms, like here's a little baby. Once that one's growing, it'll need to kind of be held up. I usually use like a plastic produce bag, pantyhose. You can cut up a loofah and just tie it to the trellis to give it some support. These are southern peas, kind of like black-eyed peas. They're called chicken and dumplings. That was another local heirloom that Will had seeds for. They look amazing. This to me is such a testament of how beneficial it is when you can save seeds from your own garden and grow localized things, or you can get other localized heirlooms. You can, of course, grow seeds from anywhere. I've had people ask a lot, do I need to find a seed company that's local to me? And not necessarily, because just because a seed company is local to you doesn't mean that they source their seeds local to you. They might have growers all over the country. So you can ask, you know, where are your seeds from? And I do think that if the seeds were developed and saved from plants that had grown locally to you for generations, they're just going to grow better. They're just going to be more adapted to your climate. But I'll grow seeds from anywhere, especially if it's a unique variety that I won't get to experience otherwise. And they may struggle a little bit with our heat. They may struggle a little bit with our humidity, but a lot of times you still get a harvest. However, I think that if you're really growing for production and you're trying to grow like a lot of something for the sake of like preserving, yeah, oh, my lens doesn't zoom enough. Okay, I gotta sneak over. There's a hummingbird. Oh man, I stepped towards him and he went the other way. That just made me so happy. Look at this beautiful wild garden full of life. Sorry. That's my squirrel. You know how people say squirrel? For me, it's hummingbird. Okay. Yeah, if you can find seeds that are grown locally to you, they're going to do better. So if you're trying to put up as much as possible, let's say you're going to grow 100 of the same kind of tomato, I would definitely find a variety that is more suited to your climate. If you're trying to experience things, the goal is not necessarily optimum health and production. Grow from wherever. And ideally, the most ideal, and this is what I like to do, find the seeds that you really want to grow, even if they were developed in Idaho and you're in South Carolina, and then grow them in your garden and save seeds, and then grow those the next year and then save seeds. And within a few generations, you have a variety that, though its genetics came from somewhere else, it will get more and more adapted to your climate every year. I really did try to train these melons, these Kiku chrysanthemum melons, up onto the trellis, but they just have had a mind of their own. This melon just doesn't have long runs. Like, it's just really bushy, and it doesn't have really like long tendrils. But look how many fruits are on this. There's like 6 right there. It's wild. That one's getting pretty close. Melons are pretty easy to tell because they pretty well just disconnect on their own whenever they're ripe. In the past, I grew that on like a single wall trellis, kind of like that. And I think I liked that better, because I really am having issues getting this one to go up. So it's so bushy and it has so many. I should cut some off. And then this is a white leopard melon, and it also is bushing pretty well, but it's starting to climb up. See those down there. Okay, skip down to this high tunnel. Y'all, I need a name for this high tunnel because we were calling it the annual high tunnel and that the perennial high tunnel, but now this is really becoming the classroom high tunnel and the redemption high tunnel because of getting contaminated soil. And right now nothing's changed since the last time you guys saw this, except for maybe these really pretty zinnias, which this is a variety of all different kinds. Those look pretty lovely. And of course these cucumbers back here are starting to really fill out. And some of the peppers are starting to get some fruit on them. Some of them are still really stunted. Oh, well, that's a little different. The wheat is starting to sprout. You'll see that. And then over here I've got a couple of corn sprouts. Not very much, but there's like 2 or 3. Now this will change between now and the next time you see it because we're going to tear all of these tomatoes out and take the trellises down so we can replant more wheat, corn, and sunflowers and see which one does best. Once we plant those and harvest them, we'll come back and plant some green beans behind it. Let them sprout and see how well they're doing, just to see which one of these things pulled the most of this contamination out of the soil, because this is very sad. Pulling these out, they're not going to produce very much, being this weak and puny. They're just too damaged. So sometimes when we empty out a garden at the end of the season, we cut plants off at the soil and leave the roots in the ground to break down, because that just adds organic material back into the soil. In the case of this contaminated soil, we will be pulling the roots out and taking the entirety of the plant out, because plants do absorb things like soil contamination to some degree, and by pulling the plants out, we'll burn these, and that way we're not perpetuating the issue. So I've had a lot of people make comments and ask whether, like, why are we comfortable eating the stuff that comes out of here when obviously there's enough contamination in the soil to make those plants sick. And how graze-on contamination works is a grass crop is sprayed with a broadleaf herbicide like graze-on, aminopyralid, to kill things like wild nightshades and legumes and the different things that typically grow in grass crops. The grass crop is then, the hay is then fed to cows, and then the cows consume that, and then their manure is taken and put through compost, and through the composting process, through the digestion, through the composting process, enough of that herbicide still exists in that compost to damage nightshades to that degree. Oh, hey, sweet Maya. Thank you, little darling. Sweet Maya's coffee delivery service.
You were as far away as you could be.
Thank you. Sweet Maya brought me my coffee that I'm going to get to drink on my way back in the house because we're almost done. So enough of that herbicide still exists to damage my garden like this. It's happened to a lot of people. I've been talking about this. If you've missed some of those videos, I had my little rant about it. And of course, we've been working on different ideas for remediation. And we are shooting content of that to show you guys as we go. Because I didn't want to just scrape this out and buy new soil, because a lot of people are having this issue. And if the culture that we are living in is insisting on poisoning the world, the only world that we have to live in, I want to figure out how to alleviate that. Because if this is the reality that we're being forced to face, we have to find a solution. And so that's why we're looking at specific crops that pull toxins, mycoremediation with mushrooms, compost teas, worm teas, all that stuff. Now the question, are you okay eating that? I don't love it. I would have been devastated had my whole garden would have been this way. I don't love the fact that I am an organic gardener, and knowing that this is in my soil, I really know that this food is not fully organic. But what's the alternative? Do I scrap this and then go buy food at the store and expect that those labels are telling me the truth, that they're not dealing with the same kind of thing? I mean, truly, there's no way to really guarantee, unless you grew something yourself or you very closely know the person who grew it, that it doesn't have contamination of some sort. And the question really is, if you're eating commercially produced meat, and even some meat produced on a small farm, because they're spraying this stuff too, or they're buying their hay from these sources also, if you think that this much contamination existed after the composting of the manure and after the digestion of the cow, how much of that contamination is in the cow? It definitely raises a lot of questions. I think there are questions that need to be asked and need to be pondered. I don't think we need to get into a place of hopelessness. But yeah, like I'll eat this stuff. I don't like that it's there. I really prefer not to have that, but we do live in a toxic world, and I try to make as many choices as possible to avoid toxins, but understand that sometimes, I mean, this is just the reality. So yeah, we're gonna eat the stuff in here. I don't eat the cows. We raise our own meat so that we can avoid that. So that's good. But yeah, it's a lot. It's definitely a lot to deal with. It's a lot to face. And talking about it, I even sometimes feel the fear that people have, like, whoa, this is a huge problem. And I've been saying, you guys, like, your decisions are raindrops that whenever brought together make waves. So we have to just make all the little decisions that we can, do better whenever we can. So we're going to try to make this better. And in a couple years, I think that I can feel really confident that I'm eating organic food out of my high tunnel again. So thank you guys for joining me in this lovely last-minute garden tour. I hope that you enjoyed seeing my lovely garden, because I so enjoyed sharing it with you. I bless you guys. Until next time.